speaker today. Abby is very fortunate to round up a guest speaker for us in these times. So with that, I'd like to introduce, I'll let him introduce yourself and take it away. And I'll put your slides up.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Appreciate being here. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you all face to face. Hopefully we'll correct that one day soon. Thank you all. If you want to put up the
Will
slide,
do.
I don't know, make sure everybody sees it. Make sure everyone can hear me okay, too.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. That's not what I wanted. Sorry, technical difficulties. Give me 1 second. Let's see.
That's it.
Oh, hold on. It's coming. I think. Should be. Oh, boy. Okay. We're going to figure out. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way. There we go. Perfect.
That's it.
Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Jerry Leach. I am, first of all, I'm Abby's father, as you all have probably figured out. But more importantly, I am an employee of the Internal Revenue Service, the federal government. I'll go through that a little bit. That is the main building there in Washington, D.C., which is very empty right now. That's why we are down here in Myrtle Beach at a beach house that we have that we're able to hide away in while we get through these times of COVID. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do. I do want to offer, I am open to any and all questions, discussions that you all will, that may have. If I don't know the answer, I'll definitely get you the answer back. I'll tell you what I think as far as I can, but there is not any topic of subject that I'm not afraid to go ahead and tackle. So I do want to offer that as an option. So you all feel free to ask me whatever you want. The importance of us being able to do this back when I think it was one of the first or second classes that you all had gone through. Abby was texting me about the tax exempt organization and the tax exempt portion of sports. And she was just sending it to both, and Abby's mom, my wife, is also an IRS employee. We've both been here 30 to 33 years of our career. It's been a great, wonderful place to work. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I am wearing my my Coastal Athletics Given shirt to be part of the team today. So anything you want to talk about is open. So to give you a little bit more, if you change the slide there, just to talk about what my career has been. I did graduate from East Carolina back in 1983, way back when. Business education with a little bit of computers. Back then, you didn't have to have a computer science degree, but I was able to start it out actually as a computer programmer with a defense contractor in the Washington, D.C. area, which is where I'm from. Born and raised in Washington, D.C. I'm one of the few people who are actually from there. I have had many roles in my 30 years. I started out as a programmer analyst with the IRS is how I got hired. I worked in the IT, information technology area. I've worked in our small business self-employed, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. Back in 2014, I actually entered into the executive program at IRS. And through that, I've worked in the our data center, the Enterprise Computing Center, which you all sort of know it when you file your tax returns. I've stood outside the box that processes all the taxes, the most hated computer in America that I'm able to stand at. I didn't want to touch it in case I'd short it out and stop filing altogether. But I was the assistant to the director there. I've done compliance analytics, which is our way to look and analyze data around different compliance techniques, compliance topics. To do that, I've spent a year and a half at the Department of Treasury, which is our mother organization. From there, I was in charge of the human resources IT process for the human capital side of the house, human resources side, working with the IT organizations on where we go around selecting a talent management system, which is what I came back to IRS to do about 2 years ago. I stood up an organization called Human Capital Analytics and Technology, which I'll talk about a little bit more as we go through. It is the idea of pulling together data to make business decisions. And as you all, we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through some of this. But the whole concept of what data is important that you can make solid decisions and move forward. Our former CIO who left Visa to come work at the IRS, he always said facts and data will set you free. So as long as you have data, you're not lying. And that's the importance of grabbing the analytics and the technology. And just recently I've switched over to be a strategic manager, strategic director of our integrated talent management system. Talent management is the consolidation of workforce planning, succession planning, competency management, learning management, and all this relates to, as we talk about our workforce, which I'll show you some numbers in a few minutes, talk about how they, how do you move forward from a business perspective? What is going to be our priority and where do we focus and how do we go from there? So it gives you a little bit of my background in 30 years at IRS. I did work a little bit outside, both in the middle and before as a programmer with a defense contractor, and I did work for a private, one of the big 5 accounting firms, big 4 accounting firms for a little bit doing outside, but the IRS kept calling, asked me to come back, and they made me an offer that was too good to pass up. So some of the highlights of my career, you've heard about the government shutdowns that we went through. In 2014, I was in charge of the operations for IRS. In other words, when everybody got sent home, we have a plan that we manage by. At that time, I had 8,500 employees at IRS totally. This was not during filing season. So for us, it's just keeping the lights on and the papers moving. That was fun. Learned a lot about not only myself, but about how the organization works, how to communicate with others. That is probably one of the biggest lessons I've always told folks. If you don't communicate with other parts of the organization, you're never going to succeed because you can't do this by yourself. And that was something that was very important, especially through that. Now, I have to admit, during those times, people didn't like what was going on. Can't control that. I can only control what's in front of you. But communicating was still the important part that kept us moving. The Enterprise Learning Management System basically tracks all of our training. I was the director of that program for about 5 years. That was where we had everybody's training, curriculums, competency management in a certain system, and that's what we did. I ran that for a few years prior. And way back when, I actually plugged in that Treasury Management Information System as the payroll system for the IRS. And I installed that, which was a great opportunity. I traveled all across the country, got to go to Alaska and Hawaii to go visit those offices to implement. So those opportunities were just immeasurable. It may sound like it's interesting stuff in the sense that you get to meet a lot of people from all over the country and work with a lot of different folks. And I'm sure you all are same thing. I understand you all are around the world, different views and different ways that people approach problems is exactly what we deal with. There's not one single way to do a solution. People will find a way to get it done. Sometimes not necessarily the way you want it done, but the concept is we've got to get it done for the, in our case, for the taxpayer is what our whole thing is about. So to go a little bit more, just to give you a little background on IRS on the next slide, please. We are we are part of the Department of Treasury, as I said, which is one of the Treasury bureaus. There's about 10 bureaus underneath Treasury: Fiscal Service, the Mint. Trying to think of Fiscal Service, Mint, the Inspector General's office, Compliance Office, OCC, Office of Compliance. I forgot these names. Anything that deals with the finances of the government is what is underneath Treasury. Treasury is part as here's your pop quiz for the moment. What are the 3 branches of government? Does anyone know? I know you're holding back because you're shy.
Federal, state, and administrative.
Not too bad. Not too bad. That's sort of the levels that we deal with up and down. Across government, you've got the executive branch, which is basically what the White House runs. You've got the legislative branch, which is Capitol Hill, who sets the laws and policies. And then you got the judicial branch, which is everything on how you enforce the laws that are set. We are part of that executive branch. And it's important that we talk about the reason for the separations is that we are an apolitical organization. We do not, it doesn't matter what party is in office, who's running the government. We are separate in the sense that we treat the rules the same across the board, depending on the situation that goes on. And that's the big challenge that we always get into, is not putting ourselves into a position that is influenced by different things that are going on in the world or around the news that you might hear. IRS started back in 1862, as you can see. President Lincoln set us up to collect taxes for paying war expenses. We bring in roughly 95% of the revenue for the government. So everything that we talk about, like you just saw that we signed a $2 trillion aid package for the virus. That's money that we will be bringing in through taxes and revenue that we will then, that the Congress will apply. How do they separate the money? For all money that we bring into the government, we do not keep a dime of it. It all goes to the general treasury fund, and then they distribute the money. So it's not like what we get to use for something else. We have a budget in the budget process that everybody fights for, and we just try to manage our programs based on that. On the front of our building, you saw if you ever been to Washington, D.C., the front of our building, Oliver Wendell Holmes, taxes are what we pay for a civilized society. Obviously, taxes is a questionable, and people grumble when they have to pay them, but that's what we do to keep government running, keep programs. I think if you've done anything at a federal level, if you've ridden on a plane, if you've driven on the roads, that's all based on tax revenue, and that's where we sort of keep in place why we need to do some of this. Little fun fact, if you're into the gangster movies, the old one, we actually, Al Capone, who was a mobster back in the 30s in Chicago, terrorizing, he was arrested on tax evasion. It was the IRS that arrested him, not because of his doing stuff and killing and bootlegging and all that stuff. He was arrested because of tax evasion, didn't file taxes. Another fun fact, that's our criminal investigation unit. That is the ones, those are the gun toters that we have. They're the ones you see if you ever see any kind of drug bust, you'll see IRS on the back. That's our criminal investigation unit. They are a very interesting group. They also have, Dillinger was another big gangster in this time. We actually have Dillinger's gun in the vault in our main building at 1111 in Washington. It's there's a lot of interesting things. It's all tax related. One of the fun things is when we go in for a drug bust, obviously they don't report that as income. We actually, that's why IRS is there, because it's income that wasn't reported, which is a failure of one of the statutes that Congress has set up. So that makes it a little bit interesting in the sense of what we do. And how we approach our work. Any questions up to this point? I hope this is working for you all and what you are hoping to hear. If you can go to the next slide, talk a little bit about what the IRS does as a whole. And this will get us into a little bit of the money side. And our job is to help the taxpayers pay the right amount of taxes, to meet their responsibilities to, and we enforce the laws. And the laws are only what we establish, we are not established, but what we enforce. Things that are all set by Congress. We interpret the law. I think this is the same thing for you all in the sense of what you do around athletics. The rules of a football game or a basketball game are the rules that are in place, and the referee enforces those rules. Sometimes we don't agree. Sometimes we think the ref is off. That's the same thing we do. Is we try to enforce these rules across the country. We're the only government area that touches every taxpayer, so that we take that very serious in what we try to do. We want to, for example, it's our tax program is based on public trust. Believe it or not, it's a voluntary tax system. Everyone, we don't try to enforce tax law. We voluntarily file our taxes. We get a good, I don't remember the percentage of compliance. I know with online filing, we're doing a much better at getting the stuff through. I think we're at 92% for online filing. You can see here's our strategic plan is, we want taxpayers to meet their obligations, and we try to process where we can, make it easier for us to get to, if you have a tax question, we do not want to be that scary organization that we're here to mess with what you're putting in. It's a matter of just understanding a very complex tax law. And sometimes it's very simple, but as you move on in life, you're going to have different scenarios that just make it a little more challenging. So just sort of point out, this is how we set our goals and what we do. Every organization does do this, and we're effective where we can be. There are different factors that change things, like the budget that comes in. If we're not getting enough money from Congress, it's very difficult. There are varied ways that Congress asks us to do certain things that might be against what we're trying to do. So we try to balance that out to give customer service where we can and do enforcement where we can as well. So if you go, we lost the slide there. There we go. If you want to go to the next slide, just to give you an idea of how much money we do bring in. I pulled this off. This is actually as of 2018. It gives you an idea from 09 to 18 of what taxes we do collect. Overall, this is 18. We're in the fiscal year. We're pulling in taxes for 2019 right now, 2020 filing season. So totally, we brought in last year about $3.5 trillion. That's to fund government as a whole. You get an idea here that individual taxes, if you and I file our taxes, that's what that second line is. That came in at about 2 trillion of that 3.5 trillion. The other is employment, state tax, state and gift tax, excise taxes. That's a little over 1 trillion. When I pulled this up, this one surprised me. Business income tax is less than $500 billion. You would think that all the corporations would be making up a lot of the taxes, but this gives you an idea of breaking out where the actual tax money comes from. This might help you understand a little bit about some of the arguments that go on how taxes are being managed. That's not a political statement. I'm not trying to make a political statement. It just gives you an idea of where money comes into the government and how we utilize. So that 3.5 trillion that has come in, that's going to go toward the 2 trillion that just came up for the stimulus package. And then there'll be, it sounds like there's going to be a couple more, and we'll have to find the money to cover some of that as well. Any questions about that?
I have a quick question.
Sure, please.
I don't know if that's relevant, but from my own experience, so I was filing taxes, and I'm an international student here, and I used to work on campus here at Coastal, and so I paid about over $200 in taxes, but I got around 100 less when I was filing those taxes. I'm curious, since I'm an international here and technically I'm not a taxpayer, where would that amount go? The one that I did not get back?
So it does. What happens is, you're right. You're an international, but when you're when American dollars are involved, that's revenue. You're making revenue on American soil. So it's the same thing as if take one of the basketball players goes to Europe and plays basketball. When that money comes back into the United States, it becomes revenue to the United States. So that's where that tax goes to. The $100 that you poured out, that goes back to the general fund. Now, I can't say that it went to this. All tax revenue that comes in goes into our general, this is the general treasury of money that gets used for any kind of appropriation that Congress sort of puts it toward. So it goes into one big pot of money that they try to divvy out. It may go down to the states. It may go into, for low income food stamps type things, those kind of programs. So, but anything that's generated revenue wise in the United States does become a taxable event. And I am not an accountant. I'm not giving any official tax advice. That's just based on what I've learned over my time here.
Thanks.
Sure. Good question. You find that once you can relate some of this to where you are, I think that's sort of where some of this sort of hits home a little bit. Just to give you an idea of our workforce, this actually was the department I stood up. We just created this dashboard last year, so I get to show off a little bit of the work that I put together. This gives us sort of an idea of our total workforce, and this is during filing season. The reason I say filing season is become January 20th until what was April 15th. Now we'll go to July 15th. Is our filing season. It's our heaviest amount of time for processing, of course. So we get up to the, right now we're sitting at about 80,000 employees total for our workforce. What's interesting also is we look at this talking about, remember I mentioned about data to make some business decisions. This gives us a picture of if you look at the fourth column over, years of IRS service, we have about 28,000 who are less than 10 years. Hang on a sec, that's not right. I'm looking at, I just realized that's the wrong, that's the area, but we've got that backwards. We've got 28,000, yeah, I'm just realizing that oops, my folks made a faux pas there. We actually have, it's reversed. Greater than 40 is it's actually 799. We have got so many people who are close to retirement age. Yeah, when we get to the next slide, this just gives you some of the data that we're using. I question that 28,000 right now. We are still bringing people in, which is amazing. What we just did this past pay period, which started on Monday, was the first time we brought virtual. You're supposed to, you raise your right hand and you give the oath that you'll defend the Constitution when you come in. We also check your papers that you are you. We've never done this virtually before, and we were able to bring in about 200 to 300 people this past Monday for the first time virtually. This is based on how we're reinventing business because of the COVID virus. Because all our offices right now, the field offices are closed. We do have some campus operations going. One of the things that we do is when somebody does mail a check in, we are not a bank. We are our own bank. If you get a bank, you'll go to Bank of America and you'll deposit a check, or you'll do it over your phone and you'll do it this way. we have our own clearinghouse to go to the Federal Reserve. So we process those checks, and we have to do it within 24 hours by law. So it's documenting and keeping track of all the papers that come in, especially during filing season, which is why our numbers ballooned to 80,000. Normally we're at about 65,000 right now. So before we had automation, we were actually at about 100,000 employees during filing season, 75,000 without, back before we were doing a lot of online filing of taxes. So just gives you an idea of our workforce. If you could go to the next page, because I think that gives a better picture. That when I ran this a couple weeks ago, the average age of employees are 50 years old. That's an aging workforce. At 55 to 58, you're eligible for retirement. As you can see, the optional retirement down below, that 47,000 people greater than 5 years can retire, which includes myself. My wife is already there. She's at that moment. But you can see is where we're at for less than a year. I'm sorry, we go. Where's my full-time appointment type generation? In the generation, will show you the greatest gen we actually have some people who have 50, 60 years, believe it or not, and they are still working because they want to work. We don't force retirement. The Gen Xers 41%. I mean, we're below 25. We had less than 1,000 employees for a while. We've really beefed up our agents to try to get some folks in. It takes like 2 to 3 years to get somebody skilled enough to start filling some of the jobs that we do, especially on the revenue side. So it's important that we're able to bring these folks in, and that makes it a challenge to keep the workforce very viable, that we can work on areas. Some of the job series on the left to give you an idea of where our folks are. Contact reps, those are the people who work with taxpayers, 16,000. Tax examiners are the ones who review basic tax returns, about 12,000 people. And then the agents, the one who go out and do audits, are 8,500. You can see we got about 3,100 revenue agents. That's down. That's why it's very difficult to do a lot of audits prior to the COVID issue. But we are trying to change our programs and bring in more folks so we can do a little more targeted auditing. Not that we're after certain areas, but where we get good focus on identifying where we have potential issues and try to bring in the revenue. A predominant part of the taxpaying public, they're fine. They may make a mistake, and we clear those up rather quickly. Those are the ones where we don't get people involved. But where we really start getting into is when those who are doing something illegal, purposely trying to skirt the system, and that's where we try to work some of the on those folks a little harder. And that's where we put a lot of those folks toward. Can't work on everything, but you got to work on your most egregious issues. And that's where our leadership decides what do we focus on. Let's give you an idea of workforce. Any questions up to this point? Anything else pop in? A couple more slides and I'll open it up for anything you all may want to talk about. I wanted to sort of give you an idea. There are two sides to our house. There's an operations support organization that I'm in. It's got your HR, your ITs, your real estate, your procurement offices. But these are the groups that actually do the service and enforcement side. They're the ones who are working tax cases throughout all the different types of cases. Your large business and international, that's over $10 million in revenue. The small business group is less than $10 million. Wage and investment are the people like us. If we just file our taxes, that's where we have most of our folks. The campuses where you would submit your taxes, they do that part. The tax exempt organization, I know you all are familiar with that, being in the sports field as a tax exempt in the government entity side. That equate, we work those similar to there's the sporting events, the sporting groups, and not pro sports. Pro sports would be in the large business areas. But from a college perspective, government entities, state governments, hospitals, those kind of government entities, all that as we work together. Indian affairs, all the Indian tribal areas, we put those in the tax exempt and government entities. So what gets interesting is they have the casinos that they run. So we sort of monitor those casinos and how they work in the government areas. So one last slide I wanted to show you. If you go one more page, I thought this was sort of an interesting to give you an idea of this is how much we actually dealt with for last year. This is the 2018 tax data. You can see we brought in 135 million tax returns is what we processed. What I did is I gave you certain categories here. From those who make 30 to 40,000 was almost 14 million tax returns. 50 to 75,000, 19 million tax returns, of which you can see the electronically filed, like the 30 to 40 million. That's 90-some%. That's what we want. People sending it in, let the systems do the work. 100 to 200,000 was about 18 million. And I show this last category because you all are going to be successful one day. When you cross that $1 million threshold and running the areas that you run, the 220,000 of your returns, I expect your returns to be in that right end sooner or later. And when you get to that area of million over, give me a call because I want to work for you, because that'll be great. You can sort of see also on this, I'm not sure if we can roll the screen up a little. That's possible because no, I guess we can't. One of the areas of the 134 million, 106 million overpay their taxes, so they get refunds. That's what that 106 million represented last year. So that's got to be like 60–70%. The line below it is sort of what I wanted to show. About 6 million of those 134 million had tax penalty. You can't see the line below, but basically 6 million of that would get, so less than 1% really, if I do my math right, 1 or 2% has a tax issue that involves a penalty. And we usually process a year or two later. So we're processing the 19 tax returns this year, and we're working 18 and 17 tax returns as our revenue works through our pipeline. So that's how we schedule our workout. Any questions? We deal with a lot of paper, needless to say. The next page I do want to show you is the irs.gov is the website where a lot of this information is to be had. If you have questions, this is a really good website. They've done a great job in trying to identify. I go here all the time just for my personal tax returns on questions you may have. It doesn't track anybody. You go in here, you get to figure out, should I pay? Did I need to pay? Do I need to file? All the resources that are here are there to find out. We've added the Get to Corona Tax Relief. If you did not file a tax return last year, or we're doing direct deposit on the Corona Tax Relief checks, the stimulus checks that were just discussed are coming from IRS produces those checks because we have that capability. So those stimulus checks that'll be coming out will be coming out of our office. The trick, though, what we've been trying to do is we're basing it on, if I read it correctly, if you filed this year, we'll use this year's filing as your where we're going to deposit the check. Last year's, if you haven't filed this year, last year's return will be in the is what we're going to use, and we're going to do direct deposit to banks. So that tax relief site, you can upload your bank information if you think you're entitled to a check, then or a stimulus check, then that's where we'll be able to upload your bank information and be able to get that money coming out to you, which should be, we're hoping, I think, in the next 2 weeks or so to get that first round of checks out. And that's a lot of information, a lot of talking in about the half hour that I've spoken to. Any questions? Anything you want to talk about around taxes, government information? I'd be happy to speak honestly based on what I know.
Uh, Jerry, thank you. It's been great. This is fascinating for me. I don't know if Abby told you. I am um, actually working on my master's of accounting beyond being a professor.
Okay.
So, and my focus is taxation. So the IRS and everything there. I just did the VITA program at school, and it's very intriguing to see. You said trying to fill in very much of what the IRS does on the side of uh, being the referee and playing by the rules. There have been multiple times where we're doing the program and we're like, that's the rule. We don't like it though, but that's what we have to go by.
Yeah.
It's very interesting to see how um, those rules play together. I think more appealing for this class, what characteristics is the IRS looking for in hiring of employees? Because while all of the students in this class probably want to work in sports in some capacity,
Right.
understanding that the knowledge and skills that they have could be applied to the IRS. What is the IRS really looking for to enhance their field, and where could these students fit in
Yeah.
to the program?
Great question. We USA.gov is our is the government's website for hiring jobs. We are definitely looking for anyone with if they're the basic entry is a college degree. If you have a college degree, you can get a job with the IRS, and it's working on some basic tax initiative stuff, where we start out with folks who are doing just basic revenue work. The contact the tax examiners at a lot of the posted duties around the country are basically any skill set will work, any degree. Now, as you get more into the revenue agent, revenue area, that's where accounting comes into play. And the masters of accounting is helpful. Auditing is important. But those are skills that what we do is as we bring folks in, you'll talk about some of the executive leadership we have who've come in as grade 5 tax clerks, working in campuses and processing basic tax forms early in their career, and they have worked their way up as executives. So once you're in the programs, we have training programs to develop folks into different career paths, and it's really a way in the door. So from a sports-minded area, there are folks that you may want to apply since you all are in the sports arena. There are areas that we would focus in our tax exempt areas, in our large business areas who focus on audit. There's the business side of it, and just doing research in general on where folks are of just basically how people pay taxes. So any skills are good to come in. Obviously, specialties like IT, they're gonna want people with programming skills. But the flip side of it is to be able to develop any kind of business sense. We train everybody once they come in the door, and I think you'll find that as any job you get in, they're going to train you. What you knew up to the point of coming in has got you in the door. They're going to train you on what they want you to know once you're in the door, and that's going to be the key in a lot of places. USAjobs.gov. You can look on anything. They do have all around the country too.
And anybody else have questions? I mean, I got another one, but I want to open it up to everybody else. I got questions. Okay, so see how today's topic, what we're going to talk about after this, deals with casinos and gambling. I'm a big Ozark fan on Netflix. If anybody's watched it, I love Ozark.
We just got through episode 4 last night.
Okay, I won't spoil anything. It's fantastic.
Please don't.
But in this show, they deal with, it's an FBI agent who comes in and starts to audit the casino's actions. You said that you guys will audit the Native American Indian reservations. I'm familiar with that from out in New Mexico, where I went to school before coming to Coastal. We had 4 Native American reservations that were around the city, and each of them had casinos. What does the IRS truly do in those audits? What are they looking for? Is it purely for money laundering operations, or is it more the process of how they're working and the flow of funds?
I I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't have an answer for that, but what I do know is that they're looking for, I think the initial audit is, there's a compliance audit. Have they filed and do the numbers match up? We do some compliance based on, we will take a look at, in that region, what were the returns from different casinos, different areas, different colleges, different car dealerships. We'll look at in the area what is sort of the norm for that piece, because Southeast and Northwest may have different values. Based on that, as revenue comes in, does that look right? If it looks a little off, that may want them to go look at different parts of it. I think the money laundering gets more into the criminal side. I don't think we walk into immediately saying, hey, we want to see if there's any money laundering going on. We'll look to see, should there be something in question that may where it leads toward the criminal piece that turns into the money laundering investigation. So another case may trigger something as well. But I think the first step is our compliance area, is just making sure that the numbers that come in are legit and seem to be within tolerance based on last year, the last couple of years, and within that regional area.
Cool. Thank you. Anybody else have questions?
Personal income's done sort of the same way. If all of a sudden you're making 100,000 and the next year you make 16,000, that's gonna be a flagger. That, there's a tolerance question. Unless, now, if it really happened that I lost my job and now I'm working at McDonald's, then you have nothing to worry about if it's explainable. But when things fall out of tolerance, that's sort of where the system sort of generates. Not that I'm giving away any secret. If something is just off from one year to the next, then something's going to be a little fishy, and they may warrant somebody to take a look at something.
Very true. Awesome. Well, Jerry, thank you. We appreciate it.
No, my pleasure.
That's great. If there's any questions, if they ask me, I'll forward them on to you.
Please, I have a contact in the class, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Jerry.
She took copious notes if any of you have questions.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So let's transition now into our slides. Is there any questions for me about the class? Any of that stuff?
About the semester synopsis paper, could you kind of talk about what you're looking for on that?
Absolutely. So what I'm looking for in the semester synopsis is for you guys to take a subject that is really of interest to you. It can be anything that sparks your curiosity. Let's just say for myself, if I was writing this paper for myself, what I would probably look at is my personal interest. It falls into, not just because I had IRS here, but taxes and the flow through and governmental aspects and taxes going to organizations to build stadiums and everything else, tax revenue, those aspects. I would take that and I would write a paper about how that impacts the organizational finances, municipal finances, state finances. I just want you guys to really take a subject, research it, and fully invest in it. It's a practice for your comp exam is really what it is. I'm trying to get, one of the hardest things for most people to do is talk about finances and be comfortable communicating it. I just want you guys to take it and dive into a personal subject that relates to you. So Abby, if it's marketing or corporate sales and athletics and how that plays, and we just got dealt a major gift right now, and a gift in COVID-19 and how that impacts the wealth of opportunities and to write on different topics that come in college athletics, right? If we think about that impact, what would the landscape in college athletics be if football can't exist? what's the financial ramifications of that for college athletics as a whole? If that's something you want to take, and that can be a synopsis project to look, I want you guys to integrate everything we've taken and learned from the semester into that paper. If you want to talk about, and I think with Victoria, I mentioned it to you about the volleyball in Austria. Well, how does the club sport volleyball system work there? How does that play in? Aaliyah, you could probably talk about club sports and financing. We talked about it before of interns or athletic trainers in club sports on campuses. What's the financial ramifications of that? I want you guys to take this paper and take a concept that you might, it's your go-to topic that you talk about with your friends, and this needs to occur because this happens, or this needs to happen, and all these things. But I want you to think through the financial ramifications of those decisions. What does that look like? That's really all I want out of the semester synopsis. It's just you to take ownership of a topic and really research it, investigate it, and be able to put some financial understanding of what this semester truly is, what you've taken away from it, and how that's maybe changed how you look at different subject matters. So that's really what I want.
Okay.
Does that make more sense to everybody?
Yeah, for me it does.
Ravi, good. So that's really what I want with that. Any other questions? Okay. What I started doing, Chelsea emailed me and wanted me to reopen the quiz for you guys to see your answers. What I did instead is I posted the quiz to Moodle as a Word document for you to look at. And let me see if I can put that up here. Maybe. Okay, come on now. Work.
I just have one more question about the synopsis paper.
Uh-huh.
A limit on how long you want this to be, or because it says detailed and thorough?
Yeah. No. There isn't a limit. I want it to be detailed and thorough. So I'm going to say take that as to how you want to interpret it. Usually it's about 10 pages of sorts. Let me put my screen back up here. So I can't share stuff. So let's see. So here's the quiz from sports stadiums and stuff from last week. Answer the first one. Team owners are greedy and don't like spending money. That answer is true. For question 2, most baseball franchises have lost money over the years, but the typical team has, the sale price of teams has risen. So the answer to that one would be B. Economists note that a reason exists for policymakers to subsidize stadiums. That one is C. The teams make people happy, even those who don't go to games. And then 4, when the NFL had a work stoppage in 2011, which I was an aspect of, that was a C, owner lockout over union work rules. And 5, the salary cap is sought by owners for multiple reasons, including protection of their own greed and enabling parity. The answer is true. Any questions on the quiz? Chelsea, any questions on the quiz? Anybody?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's then transition to. Hold on. Let me pull up the slides for class, which you guys should have. Let's talk through these real quick.
Wait, I have a quick question.
Go
For
ahead.
the synopsis paper, you want that all in like APA format and stuff, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Bingo.
And submit it as PDF as well.
Absolutely. Always. Always as a PDF. Let's see, where'd I go? So, once this comes up, let's talk a little bit about. So who's been to a casino?
Me.
Victoria. Who else? Aaliyah.
Yep.
Anybody? Derek, you been to one out there in Arizona?
I have.
Arizona, Michigan, yeah.
Okay, good. So, what's one of the first things you notice when you walk into a casino? Anybody?
Slot machines.
Slot machines. And for me, it's an older person usually on an oxygen tank playing the spinny slots, right? We all notice that. So, when we think economic impact, casinos typically get a bad rep. A lot of negatives people perceive coming from casinos. I mentioned a casino here in Myrtle Beach. I was talking to the Pelicans. I'm like, yeah, it ain't gonna happen here. Why will we not have casinos in South Carolina? What do you think? Anybody want to take a guess?
There's no Indian reservations?
Not so. You don't have to have an Indian reservation to have a casino. That doesn't have to occur. How states get around, what happens is, let's say in the state of Florida, the only way that they have them usually is because they sit on those reservations. There are reservations in South Carolina. In fact, not too far from Conway is one. The Waccamaw tribe is around. So that's not the fact. Usually, if a state is enabling gambling or casinos, they usually are seen in two places. One, horse tracks, because with horse tracks you can have an additional casino. And two, so they're just standalone properties. In the South, we have the Big M Casino boat here, but usually it's very conservative values that come into play, and people are worried that a casino can bring in other aspects that can draw down a community, right? So, but in speaking of this class and what we're looking at here, in 2018, I don't know if y'all paid attention to it, but the Professional and Amateur Sports Protection Act, or PASPA, was overturned, or the Supreme Court ruled that this act violated the 10th Amendment. What it did is it opened up, enabled states to legalize sports betting. Sports betting in the United States is huge. It can be huge. Internationally, it's huge. You look at European soccer clubs. There's Bet 365 is on the front of different jerseys, and sports betting is seen as a fun way to participate in the game. The sports leagues in the United States didn't want to publicly admit it, but they knew it was true. And if you think about it, fantasy sports. How many of y'all play fantasy sports? Everybody, for the most part. Aaliyah, do you?
Yeah.
Derek?
Yep.
Victoria, you play fantasy sports?
No.
Oh, bummer. Try it out sometime. It could be fun. So it brings people into the sport, and it brings this heightened sense of participation, right? My wife and I play fantasy sports against each other. And we have a league where it's family. My sister plays. Her family plays back in Florida. It's a way that we all stay connected. But also, I think fantasy sports, whatever game's on TV, I might have a dog in the race, so there's more viewership, more eyes watching it. Well, we want to legalize sports betting overall. Partly it was in place that Vegas had a permission to do it. That's really the one place they could. But now with internet and the ability to put this in place, it provides added elements to do it. So once this happened, you started seeing states. I think New Jersey was one of the first to pop open a sports book, usually at casinos, but make it legal. And most recently, Barstool Sports is going to open up a sports book. So it's a way to make a lot of money. If we think here, the perceived impact of gambling, casino gambling overall, there's 76 million Americans step foot annually in a casino. It's not just in Vegas; it's everywhere. $38 billion annually is spent in revenue. $10 billion in tax revenue is coming in. And then employs about 0.1% of the American population. So you might not think that's a lot, but that's a group of wage earners that can subsidize this. You see a casino pop into town, that's going to employ a lot of people, right? I mentioned Ozark before, and has everyone watched Ozark? Seen Ozark on Netflix? Everyone?
I'm currently watching season 3, but I haven't got caught up yet.
Okay. But you've seen, so Chelsea's seen it. Aaliyah, have you seen Ozark?
No.
No, you need to watch it. Derek, have you?
Nope.
Okay. Abby, I know you have. Anybody else?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, good. So with Ozark, they want to open up a casino. And you see, I encourage you to watch it. It's a great show, but I encourage you just to watch it. I think, Chelsea, you're at a great spot in it where they're getting this casino developed and pushed through. And you see the process of it and questions of all these things come about. So if you're looking for a way to kill time, go watch Ozark and you see casino gambling. Questions of this and its impact in overall. There's a belief that if a casino opens up, it's going to pull people away from local small businesses, right? If I open a casino, I'm not just going to open up a gambling floor. I'm going to put in a restaurant, a show, a theater, some multiple bars. I want people to come. Essentially, I want you to come there at 9 in the morning and not leave till 9 at night and spend all your money on my restaurant, my food. I'm trying to make as much ancillary money as possible, and you're going to lose money. Perfect. It's a win-win across the board. I saw this in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They claim that casinos can pull people away and everyone wants to go to the casinos. In Albuquerque, where there's about 600,000 people that live there, we have within easily driving distance 4 casinos that surround the city. And there's never a shortage of people going to restaurants, bars, anything inside the city. So it depends on where you're located. Metropolis for small town. If we put this in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana, sure, it might hurt the small business in town. But usually people still come because as many people want to go to the casino, a lot of people say, nope, I don't want to go. And why do people oppose casino gambling? One, it has been found that gambling is addictive. So people say it should be controlled and banned. I say, you know what? Losses from gambling are deductible on your taxes. That's true. Little things. And then they say there's an increase in externalities. So it can hurt the local community that are not a part of that transaction occurring. Right? And we think about people going and you're gambling. Well, you're gambling away your money, which means that you're not going to have your money to pay your mortgage. There's going to be increased debt, and which leads to increased poverty, which can bring down your local economy. So at a time when we're trying to build our economy up, are these casinos potentially going to pull down my local economy of where I'm at? Those are all questions that have to be asked when these go in. What's going to be done? That's why you always see a big push in casinos, usually sometimes by law, are required to fund or support a gambling addiction line or support system to help with that. So it's little things, just as the tobacco industry usually helps with some tobacco stop smoking initiatives, but how that goes. How does gambling work? Well, it provides the same emotional highs and lows that are experienced through drug addiction. Psychologists have studied it and they found this works. It's addicting because it leads to some sort of thrill of the chase of what you're doing. Right? If you've ever played a table game or you're at the slots, you're like, yes, I won $2. Great, I'm up. Oh, then I lose. I'm down. Well, I'm going to get it back. You always those little wins that can come back. So it's all part of the thrill. It's all part of what you're doing. So gambling is an element of it. Now, how do casinos make their money? They said you lose money, they make money. You make money, they make money. So casinos always win. That slogan, the house always wins, is true. What the casinos take out of this is called the VIG, and that is the expected percentage of any game that the casino will keep. So look up, and if we were doing this in class, I would actually pull up, if sports are actually occurring, I would pull up the odds, the gambling odds that occur. And you can see, especially the money line odds, which are the plus 100, minus 220. If you look at those, you can figure out the odds percentages. The odds percentages never add up to 100%. They will always add up to like 104%, 106%, 102%. So there's always a percent that goes back to the casino, right? And I never feel bad if a casino loses money, personally. I don't know about you guys, but that's just me. And that's something, that's how casinos make their money. That VIG that's created is what funds all the operations of that casino. So when you think of all the money that's funneled through that, the $30 billion in revenue, that 3 to 4% is what funds everything inside that operation. So it is a volume play. If we think back to stadiums in Las Vegas, what we talked about last week, that VIG is what casinos didn't want to give up, right? If there's that 4 hours that you're at a football game, that's 4 hours that you could be losing money at my casino where I'm making 6, 7, 8% off of your losses. Like, that's a good deal. So even more. So there's just little things right there. And economists always refer to gambling as having a negative expected return. Like when you go into a casino, you're never expected to have a positive return, usually. So let's talk daily fantasy sports here. So what do you guys think? Is daily fantasy sports a game of luck or a game of skill?
I think it's luck. I mean, either way, you're still hoping the athlete has a good day.
Mm-hmm. Who else?
Both.
Yeah,
Both, maybe.
How's it both?
well,
Because
skill to know what you're doing and making the decisions you're making and why you're putting which athlete where, but then you never know, they could get injured and then your whole thing is messed up.
Okay.
yeah, because you also have it also depends on what other people are doing. I'm assuming I've never played fantasy sports, but I'm assuming that it's not only just you, but other people, and also the more you do it, the more skill you get.
Mm-hmm. So who's the best at daily fantasy sport? Who do you guys think makes the best daily fantasy sport player? Like you guys, like what skills do you think you would be the best daily fantasy sports player?
Someone who follows the sport really closely,
Okay.
but also at the same time, not too close that they're biased in a way.
Okay. So there was actually an article or two that came out a couple years ago, and I remember reading them. I thought it was funny. daily fantasy sports when it started getting really big, they said it's revenge of the nerds because the people who are really good at it are those who understand statistics that can sit there and model um, all this stuff out and know, hey, what are the likelihoods? How do I match this up? So we think FanDuel, when it first started coming out, and they say, oh, you can be a millionaire. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. If you win maybe $1,000, you're lucky. The people who are winning the $1 million games, those are the ones who sit there and literally have statistical software, Excel, all this stuff up, and are running probabilities, projections on what they feel is going on before they do. Because just as we talked about, or we will talk about later in this class, of stocks and bonds and where do I buy, if anyone's paid attention to the stock market now, where do I buy stocks at? How do I make that work? That's what you're doing in daily fantasy. You're trying to find the best value plays and those players that you're trying to take. So it's not a, hey, this player is really good. This player, if I can buy him at, 400 Monopoly dollars, and really he should be at 700 Monopoly dollars, and he has a really good chance for a game. Well, that's going to help me out. So I qualify it as a game of skill more than anything, because that's what plays into it, and that's where it really gets to gambling. Oops, sorry. So this last one, leagues have fully caught on to this because it increases fandom. The NBA actually told Las Vegas, I think it was 2 years ago now, or after all this came out with the PASPA, they said, hey, well, if you're going to use our product, like here we are, you're using our intellectual property for your services. Well, you know what? Now I want a cut. Give me my cut of that. The NBA wanted 1%. It would have equated somewhere to, I think, $10-15 million a year for him. Like, hey, give me that, give me it right now. And they're like, Cena's like, no, you need to watch. You need to just not get ahead with that stuff. So that's where it gets really interesting with the fantasy sports angle of what it is. So I don't know. Gambling is there. It's something to be aware of as we get into this industry and try to understand more and more of what it is. The full ramifications, I guarantee, over your guys' careers moving forward, you will encounter gambling will have a lot bigger impact as we proceed forward. Look over the next 5 years, I wouldn't be surprised if these leagues fully dive into opening sports books of their own, especially now that it's in Las Vegas and it's in the mecca of gambling. I wouldn't be surprised if Allegiant Stadium, which is where the Raiders will be playing, will have a sports book in it where people come in and place their bets. I have a feeling that will happen, and I have a feeling it will carry over in everything that we do. The PASPA also kind of opens up the door for college sports. So something to really keep your eye out for. Any questions for me on this? Okay. You guys all still doing well? Enjoying? Is it still working fine, the video classes?
Yeah.
Aaliyah, why did you shake your head no to you're not doing well? What's wrong?
We're stuck in a house all day.
Go outside and take a walk.
I do, but you can only take so many walks and runs and jogs and bike rides in the same neighborhood every time.
Go to a different neighborhood. Venture out a bit. Ride the bike further.
I am in a town that's like 200 people. There's only so far.
Go get lost in a cornfield.
I'm right. That's actually a good idea.
Make a corn maze. Just stick with it, guys. I think I said before, said to some others, this is a great learning tool for your future. Being able to, one, take ownership over your education fully, and you guys are all grad students, so I expect nothing but the best from that. But understanding, and some of my undergrad students, they faced it where they used to just come into class and having us, the professors, tell you everything you're supposed to know, right? Theoretically, and not have to read, not have to do any of that. Now it puts the onus on you guys to take the ownership over what you're doing. But make the most of this time. Really dive in the subjects. I I enjoy the opportunity where I get to sit back and just think for a little while and let your mind wander on topics. So if you're thinking about that semester synopsis project, let your mind wander on something and just go down that rabbit hole for a while. Right? My wife mentioned something the other day. She used my phone for something, and she looked at my search history on the internet on my phone. She's like, "What is it like to be in your brain? Because you're looking up something, and you bounce to something else, and you go to this, and you go to this. It's all just it's how your brain operates. So use this time where you have that ability to think, and if you can't do anything else on your walks, just get lost in thought and just think. It's a valuable thing to do. It's what I enjoyed the most about my graduate programs that I've been a part of, or am still a part of. Um, really embrace that as much as you can. That keeps your mind active, so you're not thinking about other stuff. All right. So, but with that, keep plugging along. And if there's any questions, let me know. I did post on Moodle for you a brief video. I don't know if you guys watched it yet on how to read the agreed upon procedures report that I posted. What those categories are. It'll help you with your semester projects. So take a look at that video. I've met with a couple of you individually. More than happy to meet with y'all. And if you want someone to talk to outside of just your dog, or in Aaliyah's case, one of the 200 people that live in the community, feel free. Shoot me a message. Shoot me, or just do that. I'm more happy to sit and talk. We talk about anything you want. I don't care. I talk to my wife or my dog all day, so please shoot me a message and we can talk. All right. So with that, enjoy it. Enjoy your time, and keep me updated. All right.
Okay.
All right. We'll talk to y'all later.
See ya.
See ya.
You.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.